Residents of the North Caucasus are participating in the war against Ukraine significantly less than is commonly believed, and casualty rates in most of the region's republics remain among the lowest in Russia. This is the conclusion reached by the Memorial Human Rights Center. At the same time, experts are documenting another process. During the years of full-scale war, the armed forces controlled by Chechen leader Ramzan Kadyrov have significantly strengthened, Kavkaz.Realii reports. Since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, human rights activists have been compiling their own list of the dead, all natives of the North Caucasus regions, comparing it with data from other independent projects. Based on these calculations, the authors of the bulletin conclude that the relative losses of most of the North Caucasus Federal District republics are at the bottom of the national average. According to the table in the bulletin, Chechnya ranks among the lowest among regions in terms of fatalities per thousand residents, 0.30. Only Moscow ranks lower with a rate of 0.24. In Ingushetia, this rate is 0.42, in Dagestan, 0.62, and in Kabardino-Balkaria, 0.67. By comparison, the average rate for Russia is 1.35 fatalities per thousand residents, and in Tuva, it is 5.24. An exception in the North Caucasus Federal District appears to be the situation in North Ossetia, where the rate, according to the report, is 1.80. The authors attribute this to the republic's strong tradition of military service and the deployment of units of the 58th Army in the republic. According to human rights activists, casualties in the other republics of the region remain significantly lower, indicating a relatively low proportion of local residents participating in the fighting. As human rights activist Alexander Cherkasov notes, the perception of the North Caucasus as one of the main suppliers of manpower is largely shaped by propaganda. The myth that it is primarily Chechens who are fighting and committing crimes in Ukraine is not supported by detailed analysis, he emphasizes. According to Wild Caucasians, as the cause of all the worst violence is a convenient trope for Russian propaganda, but it doesn't correspond to reality. The authors of the bulletin identify several reasons for the relatively low participation of North Caucasus residents in military operations. One of them is the historical memory of the two Chechen wars and military campaigns in the region. Here, better than anywhere else, they understand the meaning behind the official rhetoric of counterterrorism or special operations. Anti-war sentiment was another important factor. The document specifically mentions Ingushetia, where, according to human rights activists, the number of people willing to sign contracts with the Russian Ministry of Defense was minimal from the very beginning of the invasion of Ukraine. In Chechnya, assessing public sentiment is more difficult due to the repressive regime, but Memorial also reports a pronounced anti-war sentiment among the population and a reluctance to go to the front. Chechen human rights activist Abubakar Yangelbiev, speaking with Kavkaz.Realii, confirms that such assessments are generally in line with reality. Sentiment in the Republic is largely anti-war, given the recent traumatic experience of the war with Russia, the very same one with which Vladimir Putin began his presidential career. The war in Ukraine evokes painful associations and rejection among many Chechens, the source explains. According to him, the Republic's authorities themselves acknowledge the problem with military recruitment. Kadyrov periodically calls on Chechens to go to the front because there are no lines at military recruitment offices. Meanwhile, his administration recruits volunteers from all over Russia through the Special Forces University in Gudermes, and in the official reports. This recruitment is recorded as Chechen, Yangelbiev notes. Another factor highlighted by the Memorial newsletter's authors is the peculiarities of the local economy. Despite low official income levels in many republics, informal employment, earnings outside the region, and support within families play a significant role. This reduces the attractiveness of military contracts as a source of income, which distinguishes the Caucasus from several other depressed regions of Russia. Human rights activists also do not rule out the possibility that Moscow is deliberately holding back mobilization in the North Caucasus Federal District for fear of destabilization. The region has strong horizontal ties and experience with mass protests. While the North Caucasus as a whole has not become a massive reserve for the front, Chechnya remains a key symbolic military project for the Kremlin, primarily due to Ramzan Kadyrov's personal vertical of power. In a separate chapter of the bulletin, Memorial describes the structure of the so-called Kadyrov Army, units formally affiliated with the Ministry of Internal Affairs and the Russian National Guard, and after 2022, the Ministry of Defense, but effectively subordinate to the Republic's leader. Their numbers could have doubled during the years of full-scale war. Among these structures are the Akhmet regiments and battalions, including North Akhmet, Akhmet Russia, Akhmet Chechnya, and Akhmet Caucasus, as well as units with the prefixes South, West, and East. Despite their formal integration into the Russian Ministry of Defense system, human rights activists note that the key factor remains the personal loyalty of commanders and fighters directly to Kadyrov. The bulletin's authors also analyze the public rhetoric of the Chechen authorities. If we combine statements by Kadyrov himself, Prime Minister Magom Dadov, and Akhmet commander Abdi Aladanov, the number of fighters sent to the front allegedly exceeds 75,000. However, human rights activists estimate that these data may be distorted due to the nature of the accounting process. Rotations, short-term contracts, and repeated deployments of the same personnel are included in the official statistics. As Alexander Cherkasov notes, the actual troop numbers may be several times lower. The figures for tens of thousands of deployed fighters are greatly inflated due to double counting. Short-term contracts that can be non-renewed are common in Chechnya, allowing statistics to be inflated due to constant rotations. According to him, such a system allows Grozny to demonstrate its supposedly large-scale participation in the war while maintaining control within the Republic. The point is to maintain control over the situation and avoid steps that could cause additional tension in society, says Cherkasov. The bulletin's authors cite a more realistic figure of 14,000 Kadyrovites simultaneously engaged in the war. They estimate the number of volunteer units under Aladanov's command at no more than 1,500, without counting the same fighters multiple times. The bulletin's main conclusion: full-scale war has become a tool for Ramzan Kadyrov to expand his resources and influence. According to Memorial, he has gained new units, strengthened his position in the security sector, and cemented his role as one of the Kremlin's key regional allies. According to Cherkasov, the head of Chechnya is trying to avoid mass mobilization of the Republic's residents to avoid creating critical pressure on society. Kadyrov doesn't want to expose his fellow countrymen. By trying to appear as Putin's foot soldier, he doesn't want to bear responsibility for the excessive deaths of his subjects and doesn't want to further strain Chechen society.